All right, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Fernando Alvarenga, and I come with the Region 9 Head Start Association. I welcome you to another Solutions webinar series. I hope that everybody is all good to go with their the speakers all adjusted correctly. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me via chat, and we'll make sure that all of your logistic issues are resolved so you can enjoy a great webinar. So today, it is my pleasure to introduce Diane Spahn and David Scahill, which they will be presenting on the topic of enhancing learning with early childhood engineer. Diane Spahn is an educational specialist for Kodo, and Dave Scahill is the owner-founder of the Discovery Source and a Region 9 board member. Feel free to use the Q&A option for any questions you have throughout the presentation regarding the any of the topics that are covered, and I hope you enjoyed. And now it is my pleasure to pass the presentation along to Diane and Dave.
Thank you, Fernando. Hello, everyone. Welcome. We're so pleased to be with you this afternoon. I want to tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Diane Spahn, and I've been an educator in early childhood for almost 25 years now. I know exactly what you do out there, and I applaud you for every day that you walk into the classroom and facilitate the learning of young children. I now work as the education specialist for Kodo, which means I help the design and engineering team translate what all of you are doing with children in the classroom to what we might be able to do for you in terms of products. So I have a really fabulous relationship with a great team of designers and engineers, and my love of engineering has grown exponentially, we'll say, in the last 5 years working for Kodo. Dave?
Awesome, Diane. Well, hello, everyone. My name is Dave Scahill, and I am the founder of the Discovery Source, which our mission in life is to try to help adults and child interact more effectively, as well as we represent Kodo Kids here in California and Brooks Publishing. My son and I started the company 4 years ago after I left a wonderful career at Lakeshore Learning Materials for 25 years. And I've been in thousands of classrooms and done hundreds of workshops with teachers over the years, and just love early childhood educators, and I'm really happy and proud to be here today because of my love of STEM and with an emphasis on engineering.
All right, I think we should begin. Fernando, will you forward the slide? There we go. Okay, that was us, and I forgot to say forward the slide, so you didn't get to see us while we were talking about ourselves, but there we are, and now we're going to move forward because we would really like to know who you are. So, who is with us today? That's our first question for you. If you wouldn't mind taking a moment to answer this, we would be really pleased to see the results of who we're talking to. I'm sure that's plenty of time. Fernando, I think we should move forward.
Great, looks like we have a nice combination of teachers and administrators.
Well, welcome. We're so pleased that you could join us. And a shout out to all of those of you who we know personally, and a welcome to those of you whom we don't. Okay, we'll move on. So let's look at these key questions today. What is engineering? What is early childhood education engineering? And why is it important? And how am I going to support it in my classroom? Pretty simple questions, but sometimes tricky to answer, and we want to delve right into it since we have an hour and a lot of information to get through. So we'll move forward with our first question. What is engineering? You know, for many adults, when the word engineering is mentioned, we sort of cringe, right? We think of construction sites and laboratories or rooms full of giant banks of computers and, you know, whatnot. And we think, I don't know anything about this, and I'm not sure what to do with it in the classroom. And, you know, we want to kind of demystify engineering for you today and really look at several of the forms. Next slide, please. So there are hundreds of types of engineering and many, many branches. Among the major branches of engineering is civil engineering, which includes structural engineering. And you might be familiar with structural engineering because it's very visible to the public. You might also be very familiar with civil engineering because, again, it's very visible to the public. Civil engineers design, build, and maintain our foundational pieces of our society. They build roads, bridges, drinking water systems, energy systems, airports, seaports, all of these kinds of things. And structural engineering is mainly a subdivision of civil engineering. Structural engineers understand and can predict and calculate the stability, strength, and rigidity of built structures for buildings. They integrate their designs with natural materials and man-made materials. So structural engineers really work on structure. Civil engineers really work on all of our civic systems, if you will, our public systems. Okay, we can go forward.
So chemical engineering and mechanical engineering are also among the major branches. Chemical engineers design processes that convert chemicals, raw materials, living cells, microorganisms, and energy into useful forms or products. Mechanical engineering is one of the broadest engineering disciplines. Mechanical engineers design, develop, build, test, and maintain mechanical devices, including tools, engines, and machines.
Next slide. All engineers use math, science, and technology to design and construct solutions to problems. And so do children. They do it every day, right before our eyes. So really, engineering might be more familiar than you think. Let's move forward. All right, so let's look at the early childhood classroom now and how engineering shows up in our programs. Fernando, next. Thank you. I think the easiest definition of engineering in the early childhood classroom equates to play and problem solving. Because when children play and tinker with intriguing materials, they explore their properties, they create their own problems, they think critically, and they collaborate with others. Basically, these are the tools of the engineers: to work with materials, to solve problems, to think critically and creatively, and collaborate. Now, you as the teacher are going to facilitate this kind of experience for the child, and you're going to help them apply what they know about science, technology, math, and their social world in order to do this. Engineering integrates STEM into the everyday world. And I want to tell you briefly about this little photo. And there's me in the background. This is a picture that, I took probably about 8 years ago. This is Mason, who's in the front, and Isabella, his little friend, who is standing just behind him. And Mason is only about 12 months old at this point. And during the course of play with tubes and balls, Mason discovered that if he moved his tube onto the carpet and off of the linoleum, the tube stopped slipping and he had more control over it. And prior to this photo, Isabella was having oh my gosh, such a hard time because her tube kept slipping as well, and she was becoming very upset. And Mason loved Isabella. I mean, just loved her and pushed her tube over, which caused her to get even more angry, I have to be honest. But then she discovered him pointing at the carpet, and he just pointed it out to her and made all kinds of sounds, you know, oh, 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 he said. And she finally understood that by moving her tube onto the carpet, she could solve her problem. I love to tell this story because I love to help people understand just how competent our very, very young children are, that they are, you know, little scientists and little engineers in the making. They're already experimenting with the world. They're primed to discover all that they can about the materials and the environment that they're playing in. They are truly in an engineering mindset. Okay, so let's move forward. Let's go back and look at civil engineering. We mentioned it was one of the major branches of engineering. And I think when children are making drawings and representations of real world objects and structures, they are beginning to delve into the world of the civil engineer. We'll go forward. What does it look like in your classroom besides that drawing that we just saw? It's really evident in the block and construction area. Here's a little bridge building going on. It's very evident in your outdoor spaces, especially if you have water systems. I love this particular photo. Look, these children have made an entire zoo in the playground, in the sandbox, incorporating natural materials, man-made materials, and representing all of the different spaces for the animals. They've in fact made a neighborhood, if you will. The zoo becomes the neighborhood. It is the job of the civil engineer to create these kinds of habitats, mostly for people, but in this case, the young children did it for their animals. And we'll keep going. So let's look at the structural engineering. This is most common. You find this everywhere in your programs, right? Children building structures out of materials. They're behaving like engineers. They're stacking things. They're combining materials. They're placing them end to end. We see a lot of math and science in structural engineering. And we'll keep going. You're also going to find this with their work with tabletop building kinds of toys, with manipulatives, small parts. Lego is a perfect example. They also work on structural engineering when they make representations of real world objects. And the next photo should be loading. I'm sorry. Let's see if it'll pop up if Fernando does that. Where is it? There it is. So this little girl in the corner, she made a bed out of the materials. Children combine unconventional objects. We wouldn't necessarily think of that little cake, that, you know, that house as a structural engineering kind of endeavor, but indeed it was. And even the very young child, when combining materials, is adopting some of the mindset of the structural engineer, figuring out how things fit together, how materials can be connected, and how shapes work with one another. Okay, and we'll keep going.
Earlier we said that chemical engineers develop processes that convert materials and energy into useful forms. As our young children play with making concoctions and potions, with mixing things up, they're using some of the same types of tools and strategies as the chemical engineer.
Next.
When children mix up gooey things, they love that. And the sensory experiences are awesome, like Play-Doh, gack, slime, oobleck. And when they cook, they're playing with chemistry. And if you've ever made that baking soda volcano, you're supporting chemical engineering in your program.
Next. Mechanical engineers invent and maintain machines and tools. Children invent tools all the time. I think the most classic example of the invention of a tool is when they turn tricycles upside down and move the pedals with their hands and pretend it's an ice cream machine. I don't know why we do that here, our children in the US, but it is pretty universal that children are using those pedals in some other way, you know, wanting to make the wheel move in some way other than just using it as a bicycle. That is the beginning of mechanical engineering, to think about how tools can form other kinds of tools, and to think about how tools can serve people. Next. So what does it look like in your classroom? Well, whenever children use cranks or objects that have spinning parts, when they discover the moving parts of the toys, and if they use objects that pivot or turn and have moving parts in general, they're beginning to think like a mechanical engineer. And the reason why we have child locks for drawers and child locks for doors is because children are mechanically inclined. And I know you've heard that before, and that speaks to their competencies as young mechanical engineers. Let's ask you a question now. Are you seeing how engineering is already present in your programs? And we're going to take a minute to see everybody's response.
It's a pretty quick one there. Should be able to get a vote out. I'm curious to see.
Oh, it's almost a unanimous yes.
Yeah.
92% of you have said yes, and 8% of you are not sure yet. Okay. All right. I'm curious to know from the 8%, I'm wondering what you're not sure about. I wonder if you could send us a chat with an additional comment or question. If you care to. I'm not going to pull anybody's arm here or leg or any body part for that matter.
And we should have some time at the end to have some Q&A.
Sure, sure. That's a great idea. Let's go into why engineering is important.
So in order to answer this question, let's look at some of the traits and skills of engineers. So here's traits on the left. These are traits and skills of engineers. They're naturally inquisitive, creative, collaborative team players. They're focused, and they definitely have to be flexible. So we've looked at these traits and directly aligned them to our Head Start Early Learning Outcomes framework. And you'll see that you've got the approaches to learning, where we've got initiative and curiosity, creativity, emotional and self-regulation, behavioral and self-regulation, cognitive self-regulation. So you see they're naturally aligned very well. Engineering experiences are excellent opportunities for children to exercise their social emotional skills as well, especially with engineering projects, because children and they need to communicate with each other and talk to each other and collaborate and try to translate their ideas to others. And when they're looking to share materials especially, they also have to be patient, persistent, and apply what they know to new situations. Let's look at some more traits in the next slide. So engineers are also mathematically inclined and logical thinkers, and they're also keen observers and analytical problem solvers. And we look at our children and our Head Start Early Learning Outcomes framework. We've got operations, algebraic thinking, which matches up pretty closely with the traits of engineers, and then cognition and scientific reasoning of inquiry and observation and reasoning, and especially problem solving. All of our preschool cognition indicators point us in the direction of looking at children's pre-operational skills, which coincide with the skills of the engineer. We want children to think about the order and the pattern, the number and shapes of materials, which is what an engineer does. And of course, they have to have good communication skills, including speaking and writing and translating their ideas into mathematical forms. And helping children develop an inquiry-based disposition is certainly an area we want to focus on. And engineers do this naturally. Problem solving is especially apparent in engineering because we're trying things out, and when they don't work the way that we think they should or the way we want them to, for example, like a block tower, when you're trying to build a block tower, oftentimes they're going to get knocked down and fall over, and we have to refine and change the formula or the materials to get it to work the way we want to. I especially love engineering and STEM because these are all integrated, because children really need to have the time to problem solve and to experiment and explore and try things over and over again. And this is an excellent opportunity for them to be able to do that, is looking through the engineer's glasses or perspective.
I agree, Dave. I really agree with that. I think that, repetition is really important for our young children. It's one of the ways that they learn best, and engineering experiences often give them opportunity to revisit the same kinds of activities over and over again, each time, opening the door for them to add knowledge that they have, apply knowledge that they have from a previous situation. And let's look at some other things too that engineering does. I want to move to the next slide and show you this. This is a source from STEM Moments, Everyday Fun with Technology and Engineering. This was a 0 to 3 publication. Actually, I think it was just a PDF as part of a series that they had about early childhood technology and engineering. But I really love this. I think this simplifies it. This is one tool that I've used to explain what engineering is to the parents in my program. Because, parents are concerned. Why are they learning engineering? What is going to, happen because they're learning engineering? What exactly is engineering for young children? And this is it in a nutshell. They solve problems, they make up their own problems, they combine objects, they test how things work, predict. They make changes to systems, and they use information. And that information is used to either improve their creations or to say to them, I'm not working on this anymore. I don't think it just stops at 3 years old. I think this is indicative of the engineer at any age, including the young men and women that I work with here at Kodo. They do this. They do solve problems. They do predict what will happen. They do all of these things. And if we can, support this kind of disposition in our very young children, we're going to have children who can, take this with them into elementary school and beyond. Okay, we can move forward. This is another area that we could spend a long time on, but I want to just give you this quick graphic of the design engineering process. I got this from the National Center on Quality Teaching and Learning, and we'll have this resource for you so that you might use this as well. This is a stage. This is sort of built out in stages. And I want to tell you that young children can move through these stages very, very quickly. And sometimes they even skip a step or two along the way. They often, especially with preschoolers, delve right into the building stage. And they try out what they've built. They either keep it or they move on. Sometimes they make refinements. Sometimes they build in something entirely new. And it's helpful for us as adults to understand this process so that we can facilitate the play while it's happening and facilitate the learning. Help sort of slow the process down for them. Help them to identify problems along the way and see if we can't invite them to create new solutions or revisit their work over days and weeks and even months. So I like to use this in the classroom. I'll just post it up on the wall, just so that it's a reminder to me of what children might be doing when they're involved in an engineering kind of enterprise. Let's move on. So I want to show you a quick video of two little girls building. And I think this demonstrates how quickly they move through that engineering process. I also want to show you this because I do believe that there are a lot of STEM concepts that are integrated here with engineering experiences. So let's run the video. Okay. I'm not sure if everyone heard the audio on that. I did not. So I'm hoping that you did. But even if you didn't, visually, we could pick up a lot of what was going on. Certainly, I would call this a structural engineering moment. The girls were combining materials just prior to this, and then as I started to film, the one little girl became fascinated with the measuring tape and she started building, which left the other, her partner, to build alone. Although it was very collaborative. They were speaking to one another during the encounter. The pieces were stacked, they were counted. The teacher brought in a measuring tape, the stiff measuring tape. Gravity was involved because the tower fell over. So if we looked at this through the lens of engineering, we would look into the stability and the foundation of the structure, maybe, with the children. We might also invite them to add maybe a different kind of material along with these little cardboard tubes. There were many entry points for the teacher, and I think that as teachers, that's what we're looking for. We want to have an entry point. We want to be able to facilitate children's play without necessarily interrupting the play or impeding the thought process of the young children. So I really like this video. I think it demonstrates really quickly and easily how engineering is always going on in our classrooms. And I do love the teacher's positive approach when she modeled, just kind of moving through a failure point when that that little tower fell over. And the girls seemed very happy about it. It didn't bother them at all. I know for some children, they might fall to pieces when something goes wrong. We all have them. And that's also another entry point for the teacher, to be able to come in and help them persevere and move through a situation that doesn't go exactly the way they had hoped for. Okay, we can move forward. So if we looked at this through the lens of STEM, we might find that some of these things were going on, you know, during that little moment, right? We saw maybe some force. Obviously, gravity was involved. We had cause and effect, for sure. The use of tools in this case were the actual cardboard tubes. You know, tools are pieces that we build with. We often think of technology as only high-tech forms, computers and whatnot, but tools are really low-tech as well. If you looked up the definition, of a tool, it would be a mechanism, machine, or some sort of thing, object, that helps you do your job. Well, in this case, the job was building a tower. The tool was the cardboard tubes. If we looked at this through the lens of purely engineering, we did have design in there, systems thinking. They were thinking about, you know, building parts of a whole. We had some problem solving. We definitely had structure and stability issues. And I'm not sure if the children were understanding the material properties. It might be something as the teacher that I would go back and see if I could uncover questions that I could ask them. For math, we obviously had measurement, unconventional measurement. The little girl was measuring the cardboard tubes while the teacher was using the measuring tape to demonstrate measurement using the numbers. We had a spatial relationship because we had parts that were combined. Obviously, we had shapes, the shape of the column, the round opening end, you know, representing the circle. As far as operations goes, they did have to stack, and I don't know if they added, you know, but certainly they had an experience of physically adding materials. There was numeracy, they counted, and did they collect any data? Not sure about that in this one. So it's pretty evident, though, that the teacher could take a situation like this, a pretty simple situation, and look at it through the STEM lens to discover where children might be going with their learning, right? And where they might need a little bit of push from the teacher.
Great, thanks,
All right.
Diane.
Oh,
I think
you're
we've
welcome.
got 20 minutes left.
Great.
So we are now going to move into the next slide. And how do we support the classroom teacher and our children with engineering? And we'll move into the next slide, where we have the framework for effective practice. And developing engineering practice in your classroom begins, like any other domain, at the foundation. So engaging interactions and environments, social emotional support, well-organized classrooms, and instructional interactions. So
Excuse me, Dave. Fernando, can you hit the arrow button and let's see if we can get that foundational piece to fly in? There it is.
Ah, okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, we want to start with a strong foundation. And when building especially, we need to make sure that we have a good, solid foundation. Okay, we'll move on. Show some pictures and examples of setting up your environment with the intent of offering engineering and STEM opportunities, both indoors and outdoors, to give children opportunities to pursue their interests. And you can see here a variety of different ways. Indoors, they've got a homemade creation there where you can pour sand in and see what happens to try to see what comes out, or where it might come out and how much might come out. And they can try different funnels, different sizes, and keep exploring and experimenting. Outdoors, they have ramps where they're rolling a ball down a ramp to explore and see how far it will go and how fast it will go. So making materials available for children and giving them the opportunities to really explore and discover is what we're looking for.
Let's go next.
Next slide. So here again, blocks are the building foundation for engineering. That's the most natural. That's the one that you probably see the most in your classrooms. But we also want to make sure we have other buildable materials and recyclable materials. And when you get into mechanical engineering, you want to have things that move, and pendulums, and wheels moving things. And here we have a picture of a homemade water table where they're using PVC pipes to explore different ways that water will move. So making the environments interesting and engaging for them with opportunities for lots of engineering and science and technology, engineering and math opportunities. Right, and then next.
So we know that materials are really important to children, and they're important to creating these engaging environments. But we often get questions from teachers about safety. You know, some teachers don't even like to have unit blocks in their classroom because they feel they're too hard, the children are going to whack each other, they're going to chuck them across the room, etc. And I want to, you know, just talk really briefly about that. I think that your intentional introduction of materials will go a long way in determining the kinds of behaviors that children will have with the materials. Certainly if children are invested and have a discussion with you about how you think that these materials could be used safely and how they think that the materials could be used safely, you might get a really nice outcome, or at least better than you had originally thought. I often would have children help me set up the actual shelf wherever the materials were going to be stored. I wanted them completely invested in the materials. I wanted them to take ownership in the fact that they were the classroom materials, and they were responsible for the safe use of them, and they were responsible for storing them. They were even responsible for making the shelf tag that went along with the materials. And when that happened, I found that 9 times out of 10, children were more respectful of the materials because, like I said, they opened the box with me. They set them out. They took ownership. So try that. Just give it a try. And obviously you want to facilitate collaboration, right, amongst the children. You know, we know that our 1s and 2s are not going to necessarily take turns. That's your opportunity, you know, to enter the play and help them determine some sort of you know, framework for that. We also have to facilitate shared space and materials, even with our older children. You know, if you simply do not have enough construction materials in one area, I think it's perfectly fine for children to be able to go over to another area, move some things over, build what they need, and then when the play is done, the materials go back to their original spaces. For instance, you might have lots of small bits in your math and manipulatives area, your tabletop kinds of toys, that are really wonderful additions to, say, your block and construction area when you have children involved in putting the details on their buildings, so to speak. So, like I said, yes, we can move materials, we can move them about the classroom, but they do have a place where they live that everyone in the classroom has helped decide upon before we even start. So try those tips and see if they help you. Okay, we'll move on. I do want to talk to you briefly about Purdue University. And over the course of the last year, a grad student named Zach Gold was conducting research on engineering play behaviors of young children. The children in these programs were given unit blocks and some Kodo materials. And Mr. Gold worked with Head Start groups and with other preschool kinds of programs. And some of his initial results show that children had deeper engagement and that adult-child actions were improved when the teachers in the program made an effort to include engineering kinds of experiences as part of their curriculum. So how are you going to use this as a tool? Let's move on to the next one. Thank you, Fernando. So what I've done, and this may be difficult to see just because it's so small, but you'll have this as a PDF. What I've done is I've given you on the left-hand side of this form the engineering play behaviors that have been identified by Purdue in this research study, and then how they align to the Head Start Early Learning Outcomes framework, and then some space for your own observations. I love tools like this because it allowed me to use them for planning or for reflection. I was able to post these all over the classroom just on clipboard so that I could make anecdotal notes. I hope that it serves you well. This is 2 pages, so we can look at the next one, which basically looks very similar. But if you're interested in finding out about the actual research study, I did cite it on the bottom of the page. Like I said, we'll be giving you this. We'll have some sort of access to this so that you might be able to use this tool in your classroom. I think it's really valuable, and I hope that you do too. Okay.
Another way to support your practice and engineering experiences in the classroom is to help teachers by giving them visual prompts. We all need reminders sometimes as we're adopting new strategies or using new language that will help us be able to make it a more confident and comfortable conversation with children when we've got these new engineering type of vocabulary words or questions in front of us to be able to help us be able to use them in our conversations with children while they're at play. So posting open-ended questions or having vocabulary words around the block area or building is a great way to be able to help teachers, and especially some of those teachers who are still learning science, technology, math, engineering, vocabulary.
Okay, let's move forward.
On to the next one.
Yeah, thank you, Dave.
So
Remember that?
Oh,
I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I interrupted. I beg your pardon. I was just going to say, remember this poster. It's a great tool to have just to post in your classroom to remind you of that process. Right. You were right.
I wanted to bring this back up again before we show another video, which I might have to walk you through if we don't have the audio. I might have to kind of walk you through. But what I would like you to do is watch for the identifying the problem or creating an engineering problem, and look for the brainstorming that goes on with the children. Then they go into the building, trying things out, refining the model, and sharing the solution that they came up with. So hopefully the audio will work. Otherwise, I will kind of walk you through this next video. It's which we have here, where the teacher uses all the strategies we mentioned when preparing for an engineering investigation.
You don't want to touch it, okay. A tire, he said a tire. You're right, this is made out of rubber. And remember yesterday?
Bubble gum. Tire.
Bubble gum? Looks like bubble gum? We're not putting this in our mouth. No, thank you. Okay, so yesterday we were talking about how we are going to knock down these cans. Yeah, up. Just get in here. So, I'm wondering, how are we going to use these balls and this rubber ramp to knock down the cans? You can't.
Diane, can you hear the video?
Yes, I can hear the video in portions, and now I can't. I'm so sorry.
Well, here we have Bernadette talking to the children about their previous experiences with using balls and rolling balls and talking about bowling. And then she's taking their ideas and writing them on the board. So she did some brainstorming, and now the children are engaged in using the materials. Will be the next phase.
Who here has gone bowling before? Raise your hand.
Oh, maybe, well, let's see. Sorry about that. Okay, you can see them all experimenting.
Oh, it's not getting. Adjust it. What should we do? Oh, it's not getting knocked over. How are we going to adjust it? What should we do?
I have an idea. Let's use the rubber band.
Okay.
So let's take this one off. And let's try the rubber band. We did
Yes, sir. Oh, how are you going to fix it? Oh, well, you got to come up with a new plan. You were able to knock them over before.
We just hit the road. You turn it. No, I show you. Yeah.
Okay, share with Victoria. One at a time. You knocked the cans over. Would you like to? Whoa, what's going to happen? Okay, let's see. Wow, he's really building it tall. Look at that. Nice balance work. Oh. Make sure you have a stable base. Can I help him? Oh, thank you. Careful of the track, Tesla. Okay. Ivan, what did you think about the new rubber ramps?
I like the rubber ramps.
You like the rubber ramps? And let's see, Ivan, you said use the rubber ramp to knock the cans down. Were you able to achieve that? You did. I know, I saw you. And I noticed that some friends were using the rubber ramp very flat. What did we notice when we used it flat? Did it move faster when it was flat or when we brought it up a little bit higher?
Brought it a little bit higher.
When we brought it up higher, that made the ball go a little bit faster.
Well, sorry about the audio here. I hope most of you heard most of it. We'll move on to the next slide. She's recapping everything that happened with them and talking about what they had experienced and what they had learned. So Fernando, we'll go to the next one. So hopefully you saw in the video, the teacher used several concept development strategies. She made connections to the real world talking about bowling and integrated previous knowledge with the reference of bowling. She posed a question and had a brainstorming and planning session before opening it up to testing. She asked how and why questions, encouraging prediction and problem solving. And you may have also noticed she used quality of feedback strategies by scaffolding and encouraging children to have discussions, prompting their thinking. She provided language modeling by asking open-ended questions and encouraging peer conversations. And she used engineering vocabulary and language. All in all, I think it was a great example of adult-child interaction and instructional support.
I do too, Dave. I just wanted to say, you know, I think this is a terrific example of the teacher who's not only listening to children, but also, you know, helping to propel their thinking, helping to provoke them to solve a problem. You know, that model of posing the challenge of can we knock the cans over will spur them in the future to create their own challenges for one another. And, you know, that's what we want to do. Keep building and pushing them cognitively a little bit here and there. The benefits to increasing your class scores are, well, they're benefits. Pretty invaluable, I think. I mean, all of us could probably use to increase the intentional, you know, adult-child interaction piece of our scoring. And programs all across the nation really want to do that. So the entry points that engineering experiences give teachers, I think, help them achieve this. And obviously that's of benefit to the program, but that is really of benefit to the child. That's what we're all about. So let's look really quickly at these questions again. The questions we started off with. What is engineering? You know, we identified it in the professional world. What is early childhood engineering? Why it's important, and then some strategies for having you support it in your classrooms. And I hope that with this, you know, very brief look at engineering that we've answered at least some of these questions for you, and we've probably, you know, given you food for thought and have you may have other questions that you would like to have answered. So we've got a few minutes. And we thought that we would open this up for chat and have Fernando help us out with listening to your questions, if there are any, and hopefully we can provide some answers. So Fernando, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Hi, thank you, Diane and Dave. We are at the point where people, if you are eager to ask a question regarding the presentation or anything that you want to address to Diane or Dave, please use the Q&A option and we can certainly address the question live, or we can just write up the answer to you. It looks like we have a chat message by Miss Susan Morris. Thank you for watching. The question is, I guess, is a general question. Would this be posted to view later? It's usually one of the most asked questions, certainly. Thank you for asking it. Yes, my apologies for the sort of the technical difficulties with the videos. There were excellent videos that were used by Diane and Dave in this presentation, and we'll make these resources available at both the Region 9 Head Start Association's website, as well as I believe that Diane and Dave will also like to share these resources on their side as well. So yes, to answer your question, they will be available shortly, as well as a video recording of the webinar if you would like to revisit certain pieces of information that both Diane and Dave shared with you guys today. It looks like we do have another question by Ms. Lee. She is asking, will we have access to posters, charts, or pocket charts, questions, prompts to use with our class?
Well, we have that, we have the engineering play behaviors from Purdue University, and we have that, a similar design process question, it's not really a poster, it's a graphic, so you could print it poster size if you wanted to. I'm going to give you the link to the original one that was produced. It wasn't produced by me, I picked that up, but that would be easily enough to print. And then Dave wants to answer about the pocket chart questions. Dave?
Yeah, the pocket charts that were shown were a solution that we created to help teachers in the classrooms. So if you have your own pocket charts, I'd be happy if you want to email me, I'd be happy to send you some of the questions that we use, some of our favorites or really great starter questions or some of the vocabulary words we'd be happy to share with you. Otherwise, you can see more information on the whole program on our website if you're interested in that.
Great. Thank you, Dave. Diane. We do have another question regarding the availability of these resources. The webinar recording and all the additional resources that Diane and Dave will share with us, including the presentation, will be available for sure at the Region 9 Head Start Association's webpage.
Right.
The slides will be available in PDF form to download immediately after this webinar ends. The video feed will take about a day or so for us to be able to edit it and make sure it's all good to go to the web. But we also will link it to our web page. So those resources, to answer your question, will be available for download at our web page, and that will be the #1 place to go to revisit this information. And I'm not sure what Dave and Diane, what their methods will be to share this information. I know they will be available through email to answer your questions, of course, but we will for sure share these resources at the Region 9 Head Start Association's website.
Thanks, Fernando. Yeah, I think we just need the better part of a day, and we'll get everything to you.
And I think if we go to the next slide, you'll see that we have our contact information.
There you go.
So we are available. That's my cell phone number and my email address if you have any questions or I could be of any support to you in any way.
And ditto goes for me. You can always reach me through info@kodokids.com. I get a lot of emails, so if I don't answer right away, please don't think I'm ignoring you. I'm really not. And so the other thing is I put the office telephone number because you can always ask to leave a voicemail, and whomever is answering the phone will certainly get you to my mailbox. Okay.
Also, it is worth mentioning if you do have any general questions, feel free to also contact us at Region 9, and we will address the question directly to Dave or Diane, or as you request. So there are several ways to obtain information regarding the webinar if you're not sure, or just have just a random question. Feel free to reach us, and then we'll direct it accordingly. So if you have any other questions, feel free to let us know. Otherwise, I'd like to thank everybody for joining us today. My apologies again for the technical difficulties. I want to thank Diane and Dave for this wonderful presentation. It definitely, they put a lot of work into it, and it's been an amazing set of information that I encourage you to revisit and look forward to the additional resources we'll be able to put up on the web. I want to thank them for their time. It looks like we do have one more question before we end the oh, it's not a question. Miss Melissa Jensen said, thank you for the great webinar.
Oh, you're welcome, Melissa. So
Thank
glad.
you, Melissa. Appreciate that feedback.
Yeah.
So if Diane and Dave, if you don't have anything else, I would like to thank you again and everybody for joining in. We truly appreciate your time. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach to any of us, and we'll work with you.
Well, thank you all, and we'd love to do it again. So invite us sometime, Fernando. We'll talk. I'll talk forever. So thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good day. Thank you.